Hello and welcome to Genuinely Obsessed. I'm Sarah and this video is going to be the first of many combining my two great loves, makeup and pop culture. Today I'm going to be creating a look inspired by the Elton John biopic Rocketman and sharing my thoughts on the film. But before we get into that, I want to give credit where credit is due. I was inspired with this concept by one of my absolute favorite makeup artists on YouTube, Mikey aka Glam & Gore, who did a similar concept on her channel. Please go check her out if you're looking for other makeup artists to follow. I highly recommend her. She's super ridiculously talented and really down to earth. I recommend her NYX contest series, her Halloween series where she did makeup in a bunch of different haunted locales, and then also her Tinder Does My Makeup series. These will give you a really great idea of her style and personality. Without further ado, let's get to geeking my tiny dancers. Here's a brief synopsis of the film. Rocketman is a biographical musical film based on the life of musician Elton John. Directed by Dexter Fletcher and written by Lee Hall, it stars Taron Egerton as John, with Jamie Bell, Richard Madden, and Bryce Dallas Howard. The film follows John's early days as a prodigy in the Royal Academy of Music to his musical partnership with Bernie Taupin. The film is titled after John's 1972 hit Rocketman. So, what were my overall thoughts on Rocketman? To put it plainly, I absolutely freaking loved it. I'm not totally familiar with Elton John's work apart from some of his big hits and The Lion King, of course, because I'm of that age, but I'm a huge fan of musicals, so couple that with Elton being a huge gay icon, and I was already inclined to love this film. It doesn't play like a traditional biopic, which makes a lot of sense when you consider its subject. Elton John is someone who's defied conventions for decades, both on and off the stage, so it makes sense that his biopic would do the same thing. It helps that Elton has been involved in this project since its inception back in the early 2000s, and that his husband, David Furnish, serves as a producer on the film. I'm going to link an article from Vulture that talks about Rocketman's production history, and also leads me to my next point, the inevitable comparison with Bohemian Rhapsody. This might be somewhat of a controversial statement depending on your feelings for Bohemian Rhapsody, but I believe that Rocketman is the superior film. The film doesn't shy away from Elton John's sexuality or his history with addiction. Hell, it starts with Elton entering rehab in this elaborate devil costume, like it's somehow going to protect him from vulnerability, only for him to admit seconds later that yes, he is an alcoholic, a drug addict, a bulimic, and so on and so forth. The rehab scenes almost act like transition scenes as the film moves from one set piece to the next. It's certainly not a new concept, but I think it really worked for Rocketman. When I first saw the trailers for it, I thought my queer fangirl brain was getting the better of me and that I was totally misreading the sexual tension between Taron Egerton's Elton John and Richard Madden's John Reed. But hell no. They make out so hot and heavy and totally have sex, and it's fan-friggin-tastic. Of course, they do the Hollywood thing of panning up and away from all the good stuff because God forbid they show male-on-male sexuality in a film in a really overt way, but it's certainly more than what Bohemian Rhapsody gave us. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Bohemian Rhapsody. I watched it twice when it came out and walked out with a smile on my face and tears in my eyes both times. But when you compare it to Rocketman, it really does highlight the criticism that was laid against Bo Rap for sanitizing and straightwashing Freddie Mercury's story. My friend Kate and I talked about this theory that we had when the movie came out, that Brian May and Roger Taylor, the two members of Queen that were involved in the project, really controlling the narrative of the film. I have no doubt, I'm not trying to say that they don't love and miss Freddie horribly and terribly, but It was super shady in the film when Roger Taylor was ranting and raving about how Freddie going solo was killing Queen, that no mention was made of Taylor's 2 own solo efforts prior to this announcement. It's all well and good that they want to show Freddie in his house throwing a wild and crazy party while the other band members sit and attend in silent disapproval. But what about the infamous Saturday night in Sodom in New Orleans? Remember that, guys? Excess in all areas, eh, boys? Remember? Any of this ringing any bells? I know you want to dramatize certain elements of history to make a more compelling story, but to do so to the detriment of your friend and bandmate who isn't here to defend himself, it's pretty messed up. I think that the big difference between Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocketman, and this is just my opinion, feel free to disagree and comment below with your thoughts, but I think that Bo Rap was made to be palatable for a straight viewing audience. Thus its PG-13 rating. I mean, yes, Bohemian Rhapsody isn't just for the queer community, Queen isn't just for the queer community, it's supposed to be a band for everyone. That's fine. But Rocketman, they're just like, we don't care, we're ready to spill all the tea, thus we're gonna get an R rating because we're not gonna sanitize. Elton John's like, I'm not gonna sanitize certain elements of my story just because it might make certain people uncomfortable. In the Vulture article, they talked about how studios tried to sand off some of those rougher edges to get a PG-13 rating, and Elton John pretty much told them, I just haven't lived a PG-13 life. So, let's talk performances. Taron Egerton as Elton John, he did such a fantastic job! Like, when I got out of the theater and called my friend Jordana, I was practically screaming as I fangirled about Taron's performance. Sorry Jordana if I blew your eardrum out when you answered the phone! Like, I loved him in Kingsman, but I didn't watch him in Eddie the Eagle. I'm a bit of a content snob, and that movie just didn't look remotely interesting to me. But after watching this film, I'm dying to see Taron Egerton and Hugh Jackman reunite to do a musical together because holy damn, would that be friggin' awesome! Seriously, I was blown away by his singing in this. I figured that it would be like other biopics before it, and he would just lip sync along with the songs, you know. But oh no, my friends. This boy is legit singing his ass off in this movie. I didn't watch the movie Sing, nor did I know that he was in it until after the fact. Again, content snob here, so I wasn't aware that Taron Egerton being able to sing like a freaking boss was a thing. But now that I do, I'm like, yo Taron, you should totally do more musicals, please and thank you! But I'm a musical fan, and that's just me wanting more musicals in the world. I thought that he had amazing chemistry with all of his castmates, especially Jamie Bell, who I will be getting to in a moment because he's part of my favorite sequence in the entire film. The aging makeup didn't look too fake on him, which is something that I believe can make or break a movie in terms of like my immersion. Like, I don't know if any of you have watched the 3rd season of True Detective, but the old age makeup on Brad Dourif just looked awful and took me out of it every time he was on screen. Maybe it's just because Brad had to age decades, whereas Taron's aging wasn't as severe, and plus it was fantasy, but Mahershala didn't look that bad. But tangent aside, Taron was fantastic, and I think that he at least deserves a nomination or two for his performance. The costuming in this film was amazing as well. My favorite pieces were the outfit that Taron wore right before the Tiny Dancer sequence started, especially the jacket that had all the different patches and whatnot, like, I want one please. The bedazzled baseball uniform, which inspired today's makeup look, and then the Queen Elizabeth I outfit. So extra, so amazing, I love it. I would also like one of those boater hats with the rainbow band around it, please and thank you! All the different pairs of glasses and sunglasses were amazing. Like, be sure to stick around during the credits to see side-by-side comparisons with the looks that were in the film and real-life photos. It's really super cool. Jamie Bell as Bernie. Just... is there anything this man can't do? My drama teacher in junior high told us this great saying when it came to our roles in plays. There's no such thing as small roles, only small actors. Jamie Bell perfectly embodies that saying. Like, my only complaint about his role in the movie is that there's not more of him. Once John Reed enters the picture, Bernie almost disappears entirely for a chunk of the film. I totally bought the friendship and connection between him and Taryn. There's like this scene where Taryn leans in for a kiss and Jamie Bell just gently rebuffs him like, "Hey dude, I really care about you, I just not like that." It was so refreshing. This is how you react to someone coming on to you. Just don't freak out. He's so sweet and supportive, and I just... Earlier I mentioned that he was a part of my favorite scene of the movie, right? Well, that scene is when Taryn plays Your Song for the first time. No lie, I got so choked up during that entire sequence, which isn't that much of a surprise if you know me, but whatever, shut up, Lindsay. But I ship their friendship so much in this movie, you guys. The Your Song sequence is so romantic in a totally platonic way. So many meaningful gazes, you guys. By the end of the sequence, I was just sniffling and wiping my eyes while grinning like a loon. I could watch an entire movie that's just Taryn and Jamie as these two men in a room writing songs and making music together, and then I would applaud at the end of the movie like, bravo! Now, on the opposite side of this coin, we have Richard Madden as John Reed. His portrayal is my one major complaint about this film. There isn't a lot of complexity to his character. He's pretty much portrayed as an out-and-out, abusive, manipulative dick who's going to keep collecting his 20% long after Taryn is dead. I'm going to link an article that I found on ultimateclassicrock.com that discusses the portrayal of John Reed in this film, with one person who knows the man saying that it's pretty much outright character assassination. Now, it's really difficult to say who's lying and who's telling the truth. To quote a YouTuber that I started following recently, Peter Mon, there's three sides to this story. There's Elton's side, there's John's side, and then there's the truth. In the context of this film, I think that it's a bit lazy to make Richard Madden's Reed so overtly evil, but perhaps that was Elton's design. Maybe that's how he remembered things, and there are stories out there, even in the article, where it talks about the man had a violent temper, so maybe there is some credence, and John Reed's just looking back at his history with rose-tinted glasses. Regardless, Richard, he did a pretty good job in the role, and it was a delight to hear him speak in his Scottish accent. Now I need to go binge watch Bodyguard on Netflix. The women in this story are a bit of a mixed bag. Bryce Dallas Howard as Elton's mother has the most to do, and I thought she did a great job. The scene where Taryn comes out to her is so heartbreaking, especially for anyone that's had to come out like that, and it's doubly so when she's just so dismissive with her reply of, "Oh, I've always known, but just know that this means you're going to die miserable and alone." There are so many unanswered questions about this relationship that I'd really love a book about Elton John's life that maybe illuminates her a little bit more. Gemma Jones as Elton's grandmother is the opposite of Bryce, very sweet and supportive. This actress can do no wrong in my eyes. And then there's Renate, the woman that Elton was briefly married to for about 4 years. She's in the film long enough to exchange a meaningful and understanding glance with Taryn, get hitched, get miserable, and then exchange another meaningful and understanding glance right before they get divorced. To be fair to this film, if it were a miniseries, I'm sure they'd go more in depth, but when you've got about 2 hours to tell a story, you have to use narrative economy to make sure that your audience doesn't get bored. Plus, it's not like I'm looking for this film to pass the Bechdel test or anything. These women aren't poorly written, they're just not the focus, and that's totally fine. There is this great theme that runs throughout the course of the film about duality and loving yourself just as you are. In the beginning of the story, Elton John is Reginald Dwight, but is told that's not good enough, especially if he wants to make it in the music industry. So he becomes Elton John, and achieves all this great success and has everything he could ever dream of. But does he? There's this heartbreaking scene towards the beginning of the film when wee baby Elton attempts to bond with his father over the older man's love of records, only to be rebuffed and told not to touch them. He's rebuffed again when he asks his dad for a hug, and it's devastating. And as he gets older, Elton is revisited by this younger version of himself as he goes down this spiral of addiction and self-loathing, but he keeps rejecting his younger self. It's only when he hits rock bottom, he's checked himself into rehab, he's completely surrounded by self-doubt and loathing, that he finally acquiesces to his younger self when he asks, "May I have a hug now?" There's this podcast that I listen to called My Favorite Murder, and the two hosts, Georgia and Karen, recently released a book. And in one of the chapters, Georgia talks about the bits of wisdom that her therapist has shared with her over the years. And one of them was, be kind to little you. For a long time, Elton wasn't kind to little him. He dismissed him as a fat boy named Reggie, but it didn't matter how many albums he sold, or how many pairs of sunglasses he bought, or how much cocaine he snorted, a part of him would always be that little fat boy named Reggie. And that's okay. It's only when these two disparate parts become one that Elton can truly love himself and others around him, and end the film on this incredible high note of "I'm still standing." As Mother RuPaul says, if you don't love yourself, how in the hell are you gonna love anybody else? I hope you guys enjoyed this review and makeup look. I highly recommend you go see Rocketman if you're a fan of musicals, Elton John, or just want to celebrate queer cinema during Pride Month. Happy Pride, y'all! One note on the makeup look. If you recreate this, don't go overboard on the glitter like I did, if you choose to add glitter. As you can see from the photo where I'm looking down, the glitter, when I placed it there, actually lifted some of the beautiful colors that I had spent so much time laying down, which is very annoying. To my Twitter followers, I know that Dark Phoenix won the vote as to which review would go first, but this movie just took over my brain. But rest assured, a review and makeup look is forthcoming. Please subscribe and comment down below with your feedback and suggestions for movies, both new and old, that you'd like to see makeup looks for. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.